Cloud adoption is ramping up, but prevention-based security isn't enough for the hybrid attack surface. That's why Gartner predicts that 60% of enterprise security budgets will go towards detection and response in 2020. ExtraHop Reveal X Cloud delivers cloud-native network detection and response for the hybrid enterprise, the only SaaS-based NDR solution for AWS. Request a 30-day free trial of Reveal X Cloud at extrahop.com/trial. That's extrahop.com/trial. Keep your company and products relevant, competitive, and reliable by standardizing your security framework to protect intellectual property, become a reliable business partner, and guard financial and customer information. Standards Connect is an online standards management solution from ANSI. It's standards access simplified. Standards Connect is a cost-saving, fully customizable solution for entrepreneurs and companies that spend $2,000 or more per year on standards and want to translate spend into a subscription model, want to simplify access, search, monitoring, and collaboration, or need a centralized hub of standards for multiple users at one or more locations. Get a free trial at securityweekly.com/ANSI. That's /ANSI. Welcome back, everyone, to Business Security Weekly. Attend the RSA Conference 2020, February 28th through February 24th, even through the 28th. Join thousands of security professionals, forward-thinking innovators, and solutions providers for 5 days of actionable learning, inspiring conversation, and breakthrough ideas. Register before January 24th. Save $900 on a full conference pass. Save an extra $150 by going to securityweekly.com/RSAC2020. Use our discount code. We are running the annual listener feedback survey. Go to securityweekly.com, click the survey link. We want your thoughts and ideas to help shape the show, and especially timely as I'm just starting to put together what could be one of our first content roadmaps. John, I finally have some time to work on.
Are you taller than me now?
I don't know. I think I did.
I did. Me for one show,
I
taller
did.
than me for another.
Now it's my turn
To be dominant.
Well then, and what is wrong with this cable? What is going on today? I don't know what's going on. We're going to talk about stories, though. In a security think tank, in-depth protection is a matter of basic hygiene.
Yeah.
I think all of the hosts here struggle with the terms basic hygiene and security basics.
Sure.
I think what it really comes down to is we don't understand the level of protection that gives you. We heard John Ramsey say there are things that you have to do.
Yep.
But where I think that people confuse how that plays into your risk posture, how that plays into your defensive strategies and your overall resilience is, well, okay, first we have trouble defining what the basics are because there's going to be lots of things to lots of people, right?
Of course.
And then what level does that give me of protection, right?
Yeah.
How far does that take me?
Right.
Because some people will do what they think are the basics and be like, I'm good. Right. And this could not just be organization-wide. This could be various departments.
Oh, absolutely.
Within your organization.
Every organization is different, and every department within an organization is different, right? So I think the basis of this article was listen, don't just focus on perimeter security, right?
Yeah.
Start thinking data-centric. Because at the end of the day, the crown jewels is the data that you have within your organization, right? So start thinking there. And some of the things that they outline to help protect your data sets or your crown jewels is some of the basic things that we've always been brought up on as best practices, right? Like patching your infrastructure, right? Making sure you're changing default passwords during implementations, right? And hardening that, making sure you have complex passwords. Make sure from an IT department's perspective, you don't have too many global admins, or you're making sure that your admin accounts are logged separate than your typical user account. So it's a lot of those basic things that we've grown up on that says, listen, just shore up some of that stuff, and then you can start focusing deeper down in your process and in your strategy to secure the data. But if you get those things wrong, your
data's compromised no matter what.
Your risk posture or your security posture is going to be very low, because these are just basic things that we've been brought up on to do, and they're say easy but do hard. That's one of the things I look at, right? Yeah. Just simple patching itself. You start looking at information systems. Some organizations have some legacy products that they're working off of. Well, to be able to get that in a patch cycle is difficult. Number one, it may be a system that's used for the business, right? It needs to be highly available. So your patching window is slim to none in most cases. And hey, by the way, because it's a legacy system, you're always afraid that a patch is going to break it.
Yep. And authentication to that legacy system may not play, because I think really when you address the issue of pass, you really have to think of it as your credentials, right? Yeah. And all of the things that go along with that, right? How users are verified to the system.
The identity.
It's identity management. It's right? Really what it is.
It really is. And you know, some of the struggles that I see with customers and in organizations that I work with is a lot of times those legacy applications, those legacy databases, those legacy systems, because they have all these great intentions in the world to have identity management, MFA, things of that nature, but now it doesn't work with the legacy systems that are running the business in many cases.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the struggle, right? So here they're really talking about, you know, a lot of those foundational best practices that we've grown up with, and trying to put all of those in place to better minimize the risk.
Yeah, and I think there's the higher level, what we talked about, the security basics, and then it's how those apply in all those nitty-gritty details to not just your organization as a whole, but now you're going to different departments, different applications. So very quickly, basics becomes a very complicated matrix.
It does. And that's why I said it's
meeting this basic requirement. Right, and then what's not.
It really is. It's say easy, do hard. Because, I mean, one of the things in here was application protection, right? Well, now you have to look at every single application.
What if you have 2,000 applications?
That's it, right? So now you really got to go through it. I mean, you know, John was talking earlier about they have a zero trust policy. Well, how do you do that across 300 applications that may be in your organization?
Right.
And hey, by the way, 30% of them are legacy apps that may not have the most current security controls that you'd want in place.
I would say, because backups are in the same kind of boat, right? You have to understand where your data is and who your users are before you can go applying any security basics. So I think what we come down to is oftentimes what we've mentioned in a lot of presentations that shows is like step 0 is just knowing what you have. It's knowing what assets you have, it's knowing what users you have and what roles, and knowing what data you have and where it lives. And that still remains to be one of the hardest things, which is why no matter what you can build on top of that, it will crumble until you've got a really good handle on what you have, who your users are, and what your applications and data are. Right?
And I mean, from the recovery side, I mean, you mentioned the BCDR piece, right? The disaster recovery. You know, a lot of folks have a good backup program, but are they testing it? Are they actually recovering data to make sure that it's not going to be corrupt when they,
and the thing is, for one application or another, or one data set or another, what's your backup? Right?
Exactly.
People say you should have a good backup strategy. What we've established is that there's multiple, even in smaller organizations, right? Multiple things happening, multiple users using multiple applications that have different data sets.
In multiple ways that you can ensure you're building resiliency within your organization, right? Because you could back up a database with a Veeam backup, right? But at the end of the day, what if that restore fails? Can you fall back on, a SQL backup? So now at least you have that data available if those restores fail.
Yes.
It's that layered approach, right?
Yes. Now you're taking me back to disaster recovery planning.
Right.
And systems administration, too. There's like you said, multiple levels of backup.
That's it, right? And as a security team, in many instances, resiliency or recovery falls on our plate. So we need to be thinking about that, right? And we need to be working with the IT folks or the IT admins who are responsible for backing things up to make sure that they're not just focused on keeping the lights on, but they're focused on the strategy of recovery as well.
Yes.
So by us going out there and saying, all right, let's do a tabletop exercise. Let's actually do something where we're recovering some data to make sure we have all those ducks in a row if something were to happen.
Right. Building a strong culture creates rules that are unique to your company. Love this article.
Oh, I love it too.
And I love this quote too.
Yeah.
This could also be unique to your team. I mean, provided that the culture you're building in your team aligns with your company goals and culture. But Horowitz's argument is as simple as it is powerful. The article says you can't create something unique and compelling in the marketplace unless you first create something unique and compelling in the workplace.
Right. And it's funny. I started reading this article, and it brought me back to Jordan Belfort with Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
And just having all those little things that they do to hype, right? And
yes.
that's kind of where it brought me out where, I mean, obviously that's
an extreme
culture, right? Because it was almost cultish.
Not even bent, but broke the law, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was cultish, but you see how powerful that is, right? By having, these different, what they're calling here, shocking rules that you have to follow within your organization.
But they're clear and easy to understand, right? The examples they give are at Amazon.
Absolutely.
You still build your own desk, right? And if you haven't looked into that part of Amazon's culture, we talk about Amazon as this behemoth company and being money hungry, but they still have elements of their humble beginnings in everyone builds their own desk kind of thing, right? And then one of the other examples was...
There was Coughlin time, and it was... I related this to the Marine Corps, right? Because the Marine Corps culture was, if you're 10 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late. And that was kind of Coughlin time's rule there, right? If you're showing up 5 minutes early, you're still late, right? Because he wanted punctuality. He wanted to make sure, his team was there on time so they could get busy and start working on the next game, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. It just reminded me of my time in the Marine Corps because again, it was all about punctuality and being where you need to be on time. But then they talked about Quicken Loans too, right? It's funny because the founder of Quicken Loans wanted to push the fact that even if it's a minute before you're supposed to leave, if a customer question comes in, you need to take the time to answer that. Even if it's going to take you an extra hour, you want to have that level of response and customer service.
Right.
And the challenge he put out there to the entire organization was, listen, if you're too busy to take that call a minute before you leave, send it to me and I'll take it. Right? So who's going to do that, right? Who's going to push it up to the founder or the CEO and say, sorry, I was too busy for this.
Gotta run.
Gotta run. Here, you take it.
But that's also, these things are very strategic to the mission of the business and or the team.
And that's the key. It's aligning it to values of the organization.
Competing in a market where people were going from those legacy on-premise systems into the cloud and needed that level of trust, right? I think that's what he was trying to accomplish there, right?
100%.
So a lot of these things are definitely aligned with the culture and the mission of the business. But don't be afraid to use them in your own team, in your own organization.
Right.
It's important.
It helps define, number one, the why. You have certain mission statements and values within the organization. But then it also gives a really quick, down and dirty way to achieve that, right? I mean, the one that I liked was the author of the article actually worked for Cranium, the board company, game company, right? And they used to have this saying called CHIF, right? And CHIF meant clever, high quality, innovative, friendly, and fun. And they would go throughout their day and they'd say, oh, that's not CHIF, right? Because you're doing something against the mission or the values of the organization. And they had that little acronym for it, right? So, you could be able to call out accountability with just that one term and everybody knew what you meant.
Right. Where do you want to go next? Is it a picnic or air gapping? We don't have to cover all the articles in here.
I mean, air gap was interesting, right? That was an interesting article because for me, it made me think back, is there anything air gapped these days, really?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, right? I mean, you have the ability of USB, right? Somebody brings in a USB, plugs it in, and has a payload on it, done. This day and age, integrations are key. I mean, I know I've dealt with a lot of organizations that say they're air gapped, and then when you start digging into the weeds, oh, we have this integration to this cloud app, and we have this integration to this other organization. And it's this was under the context of how isolating operational technology is a thing, and they think it's securing them. But when you dig under the covers, it's not air gapped.
But that's the crux of it. Whether you're segmenting or air gapping, you still have to address the issues.
That's it.
And I look at it like you would for a WAF, right? You use it as a temporary measure. If you have those legacy applications, sure, you're going to want to segment them off, right? You maybe want to air gap them as best you can.
Sure.
But I look at it as a temporary I think people that do that and think they're done are in trouble. I think you have to use it as a temporary measure to buy you maybe some time, buy you a little bit of resiliency, which is what it gives you, to come up with a solution that you can fully integrate and have it be resilient while it's connected into the world. Because let's be frank, most of what we do today in businesses has to communicate with other things.
Oh, and that's the key, right? So
critical infrastructure, I get it. That's a totally different ball of wax.
It is, and I would even argue the fact that they have to go under the covers and take a peek at what's really happening, right? Because all of that information that's getting, built by these operational technologies or any technology that you have to air gap, at some point that information needs to be shared somehow, right? So examples that I have is an organization that I was dealing with said, my entire network's air-gapped, right? This segment of my network is air-gapped. So we start digging under the covers, we do requirements gathering, and then we find out that there's this other application that's on the business network that gets fed this information. So we start asking questions. Oh, is this an API? Is it, how are you actually integrating this application? Oh, well, the legacy system does an export, dumps it to a CSV file. We grab that CSV file, take it into the business network, and then we import it into the system. Well, what happens when that CSV file gets compromised when it's on the business network? Same thing, right? You're getting you would have a data breach of that system because you pulled it out, right? So dig under the covers, right? I mean, you may think it's air-gapped, but it really may not be because you're sharing the data elsewhere, or you have people with access, like I said, with a USB drive. It could be as simple as that.
We've covered probably dozens of ways to bridge an air-gapped network, and a lot of it is very theoretical, but often what happens is the theoretical can become reality. Yeah. Absolutely. How to avoid the picnic, right? Person in between the keyboard and the chair. And I think John talked about this, and I liked John's approach in the previous segment where, and I think it's something we've been saying consistently, at least for the past several months on various segments, is we can't expect the users to be security forensics folks, right? We can't. At the end of the day.
No, and we need to be enabling them, right? We need to be educating them. We need to be, showing them the way. It's a shared responsibility across the board, right?
Yeah.
It's a responsibility of the security team. It's a responsibility of the humans in the seats. It's a responsibility of the leadership of the organization to push the message down to their folks and help in that training exercise, because security teams are limited staff, right? We need all the help we can get. We need all the buy-in that we can get. I like this article because it kind of went through a couple of instances that I really didn't think about, right? And one of them was genuine mistake versus insider threat.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes humans are making genuine mistakes. They click on something they didn't think was malicious, right? But then you have the insider threat side, and they had some pretty alarming statistics on how much happens from an insider threat perspective.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you look at why and the reasons why there's insider threat, could be something as simple as a whistleblower, right? Someone in the organization who doesn't think that the organization is doing the right thing, right? Or maybe doing something illegal, and they exfiltrate data to prove their point as a whistleblower. And what that showed in this article is the lack of a process. Because if you had a good whistleblower process, that breach would have never happened.
We talked about that on a webcast or a segment. Yeah, with Observe It.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other one was grudges, right? Someone who has a grudge against leadership or another employee. If you have the right deterrence and processes in place, so that way they have a voice, you'll deter those type of things from happening because there's a process. And I'm not saying 100% deter.
No.
But it helps to have a process that someone can follow.
We don't ever mean 100%, right? We're hackers at heart. And we know that there are ways, right?
Absolutely. But again, with a good process in place for the things like the whistleblowers and the folks who may have a grudge and they just want to, shine some light on an issue that may be happening within the organization, it could be a deterrent to stop those type of things from happening.
Why isn't as a service in enterprise? What isn't as a service in enterprise technology? So some of the stats are failure to adopt the trend will come at a price, according to the tech leaders. They fear lagging adoption will bring about higher costs of maintenance, office space, and power. 41%, 33%, and 31%, respectively. They also will say that make their companies more susceptible to cyber attacks if they don't move to the cloud, said 35% of the respondents. Now, it's not 100% or 0% in either direction. And I guess my point in this article was these are all case-by-case basis, right?
100%.
We all have multiple applications. Even the smallest businesses, you're going to have dozens, potentially, applications.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to make the decision where they live.
Yeah, I think from this perspective, it's just be smart with your migration to the cloud, right? Just don't have a knee-jerk reaction. I know a lot of organizations are, especially folks who are doing budgeting for the organization and are working with their CFOs, they're looking for ways to get off of the capital expense and move to operational expenses, right? And that has cloud written all over it, right? Subscription service, you can move your data center to the cloud, you can move certain technology services to the cloud, but you have to be diligent how you're vetting these cloud service providers at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, because did I put in there, there was a case where there was all these VPCs or virtual hosting providers, right? They were hosting all these people's websites. And then after Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it turns out, I think, one company created a dozen or so hosting providers, and that was today closed down everyone's accounts and said, yep, we're done. And there was some stealing of I wasn't sure where, if there was something illegal where they were intercepting the transactions, or if the higher volume during those times caused higher hosting fees, they got their money, and now they're out. Right. And it was a great article that I'll cover somewhere on the network this week with a lot more of the details. But that came back to, where are you going to host it, and how are you going to host it is a huge question.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the security teams need to be heavily embedded in the decision-making process. That's where the benefit's going to happen, right? Yeah. So if you're infused in the front side of the process as a security team during the time where IT's vetting applications. Yep. Now at least you're a step ahead of the game, right? Because now you can start asking the right questions. All right, let me see this cloud hosting provider SOC 2 Type 2 report. That'll, at least at that point,
but this is internal security as a service, right? It's don't go to some fly-by-night hosting provider. Come to IT. You got to bring down those barriers to entry. You've got to done your due diligence on the back end and go, well, we've created a partnership. We have a secure Amazon whatever service set up. We can host your application, and there's a team monitoring it. And we've vetted the hosting providers and services to a certain security requirement.
Right, and that's a whole other conversation, right? Taking that traditional mindset of or brand of being the department of no needs to go away, right? Because that's why shadow IT is happening. Shadow IT is happening because of a brand within the organization where the folks who are working in the business think that if I go to IT or if I go to security, they're just going to tell me no anyway. So let me go find a way to do my job and do it as efficiently as possible. Well, let's flip that on its ear, right? Let's be there to enable the business, right? Because when we're getting ahead of it and we're being strategic with the business units, they're going to want to do business with us. They're going to let us know about things up front so we can help vet it.
Right. Because cost is relative. In that example, you can see where, we're going to have this big surge. We can host some of our infrastructure. These hosting providers are really, really cheap, so we should go there. But now look what happens. Now you've got to pull your data out. You got to find somewhere else to host. In the end, it ends up costing more money.
More money, right? So why not be strategic with these teams, right? Help influence the business to make the right decision. Right. Get them to where they need to be, right? I mean, if the CFO is looking at shifting capital expense to operational expense, help them get there. But make sure they're getting there in the right way. Right. That's the key. So
and that might take time too. It does require some patience, right?
100%. And
everything
we're
talking relationships. About, like implementing DevOps, moving to the cloud, whatever. All these things take time.
It takes a lot of time, planning, right? And depending on how the brand currently is of your business unit, of your department, you may have some making up to do. You may have to start relationship building across organizations. And get that partnership with the CFO, with the other leaders within your organization.
We, of course, have to talk about time management as a topic. And the article I chose are 3 lists you should be making. Now, I do like one of the graphics that is in this article. Is a little complex, I think, to kind of map out. Did you get that too? It's very complex to map out your to-do list. But one thing I did like, and it's a great TLDR summary in there, but it suggests that there's a matrix, and at the top it's urgent, or not. Go read the article for the graphic. It's
basically the Eisenhower matrix, right?
Yeah, it is the Eisenhower matrix.
It's your impact and urgency matrix. Right? I mean, that's, when you're in an IT services company, that's how you handle incident management and things of that nature, right? Impact, urgency, likelihood. You start modeling it that way.
What I really liked is it took the not urgent and not important, and it said is that right? No, not urgent but not important is delegate. I like that.
Right.
That was good. Find a way to delegate those tasks.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So that you can focus on the important and urgent
the more strategic things, right?
And the more not so much not urgent but important things, right? Those strategic goals that we're moving into 2020 and everyone's talking about what are your goals, right? And no one, it's not urgent because there's no one beating down your door for what's your next presentation that you haven't submitted to any conferences for, right? Like what's your next, no one's beating down my door for that with a deadline yet until I officially submit, then there is a deadline. But there's a lot of projects, right, that we all want to work on that don't necessarily have a deadline yet. And this was, I thought, helpful to consume and understand.
Yeah, one of the pieces I loved about it, right, is it had the 3 lists were, the errands and the short-term priorities, right? The second was the long-term goals and needle movers, things that are actually going to move the needle within the organization, right? And then the I'm done list, right? The part that I liked was when you get to the long-term goals and needle movers, it actually says start breaking out those initiatives into smaller tasks. And then you'll be able to actually take some of those smaller tasks and move them up to the errands.
Yeah.
Right? And now you can start delegating some of those errands out.
Right.
So for me, it created this nice life cycle where you can start chopping things into smaller bites. And now you can start delegating some of those smaller bites out. So everything's not on your shoulders, right?
So complex, but I think our audience will take some good tips from it.
Yeah.
We talked about, you've certainly talked about being in an MSP sort of role, right?
Yep.
100 customers hit by a ransomware attack. I mean, this just solidifies your job, Jason, is really what it does. I mean, this is just like you should give Jason a raise because stuff like this is happening elsewhere, not where Jason works. This is basically, I compromised the MSP, and now I've compromised every single one of their customers, right? I mean, this is like the worst case scenario for folks like yourself.
Oh, it is.
Right?
I mean, this is the horror story, right? And if I can find some wood to knock on, I'm gonna knock on it right away because MSPs are targets.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about it, right? We hold the keys to the castle for all of our customers.
Yeah.
I mean, we're their technology support, we're their infrastructure support, we're basically giving them a portion, of the IT department as a service, right? So think about the level of privilege that has, and if you're not vetting out your MSP, kind of like what we just talked about, vet out your cloud providers, vet out your MSPs to make sure that they're taking that security first mindset, right? That the security team is actually involved in architecting how they connect to your network, how they access your network, how they're storing credentials, right?
Yeah, I didn't dig in. Did it say how they were breached? I mean,
so it was
doesn't really matter. At the end of the day,
basically it was through their remote access software.
Yeah.
I think it may have been a bug in their a vulnerability in their remote access software. But at the end of the day, it was basically a different variation of Grand Crab, right? I mean, it was our evil, and they just started hitting all of these dentistry offices with ransomware, right? And I mean, at that point, if you can't function as a business, right?
Yep.
You can't provide to your clients. You're dead in the water, right? So I mean, we talked about basics, but one of the things that they mentioned in the article is that their remote access software didn't even have multi-factor authentication to get in. So at that point, right, you're just, I mean, you're, as long as you can get access to the hash and decrypt the hash and get the cred to get in over, whether it was a VPN or a piece of software that they used, I'm not sure. But now all you had to do is compromise a password at that point.
Right.
And now you're in.
They
and you're into
easy.
all of the clients at that point.
Right. You have to protect those keys to the kingdom.
You do, right? And
for and they're keys to not just one kingdom, but all of the kingdoms.
All of the kingdoms, right? Every client that you have, each one of those fiefdoms, kingdoms, you have access to, especially if they're not deploying best practice, right? I mean, if that one password was for every single one of their customers,
or even
that's
a percentage,
bad
right?
practice, or even a percentage, right? Reusing passwords. So, just some of that basic, right? And I guess the moral of the story is vet your MSP like you would any other privileged vendor, because again, they have access to the keys to the castle.
I had a duplicate from last week over cloud responsibilities. We talked about who owns cloud security, right?
Yep.
But also in this article, they talked about many companies believe they are cloud first or all in the cloud. I'm just skeptical about that.
Yeah, I mean, I am too, because I mean, at this point, nobody is 100% cloud. There's always going to be some level of data coming down to the site.
Sure.
Always, right? I mean, even if you take it at its most nirvana aspect, right? Every business application I have is up in the cloud right now. Guaranteed people are downloading to their laptops, PCs. You still have data coming down to the network, right? At the end of the day. You
still have stuff to manage.
100%. It may be unstructured data because you're building reports or exports or things of that nature. But data is going to be on-prem, whether it's on a laptop or a file server or in SharePoint or something that you have on-prem.
You still need a holistic security program.
You do, 100%.
I guess is my point. The last article was one of my favorites because I talked about it last Thursday on Paul's Security Weekly. But Screw productivity hacks. My morning routine is to get up late.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we talked about this particular topic on the show several times. What I love about this article is it backs up something I've always said.
Yeah.
You have to do what works for you
100%.
at that time.
That's it.
Right? So could be you're a morning person sometimes, could be you're a night person sometimes, and that depends on the job you're working, your family life and personal stuff that's going on at the
100%.
time, the project you're working on, whatever it is,
Yep.
right? I think that at some level you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
But there are, what this article did state is that there are studies that prove that just some people work better late at night, some people work better in the morning, and it's your genetic predisposition happens when you're born, right? Like
100%.
whatever. And this person was really funny.
It's part of your personality. It's part of your DNA, right? And one of the things that the article brought out is that there's a stigma these days with people. That if you don't get up in the morning very early, you're not as productive as a person. And I think that's crap.
You're productive when you're productive.
That's it, right? I mean, productivity is individual, right?
Yes.
It's on an individual basis.
Now, there are times in your job or your project where you're working with a company that's overseas, and you may have to adjust.
You may have to adjust, right? You don't have a choice. But that doesn't take away from your natural productivity, right? That your cycle, your daily cycle. It doesn't take away from that because that comes natural to people. And I think the article is right in saying that we have to pull that stigma away.
Yes.
Because let me tell you, I have some rock stars at my company.
And they're night owls.
They're sending out emails at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. They're absolute rock stars.
We work in a
try
world
to ping them at 8.
Yeah,
forget it. Not happening, right?
But I think it's a great point for leaders that are listening, right, in a position to say you have to let your employees work when they're most effective, right? As best you can. Technology has made that a lot easier in the past 20 or 30 years, right?
Right.
So let's let people work when they're most effective.
I relate it to that remote workforce, right? Back in the day, oh my God, you can't have a remote workforce. There's no face-to-face.
Yeah.
There's no face-to-face, social aspect to it. They're not going to be productive. They'll be at home messing around. Well, we know that that's not true. We know that remote workforce works, right? And some people are more productive when they're working out of their home office than when they come in. It's that same mentality, right? Be flexible enough to know your team, right? Have that relationship with your team where they're going to tell you, listen, I'm not a morning person, but I'm going to go kick ass all day long, starting at 10 a.m. Until 2 in the morning.
There you go.
I couldn't ask for anything more than that.
Right. I think you'll get better productivity having that approach.
Absolutely.
That's why I wanted to add the article
100% agree.
Yeah. Well, that concludes this edition of Business Security Weekly. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. See you next time.